Hi, everybody at home. Unmuted. Can you guys at home hear me now?
Hi, yes.
Okay, so is it not going through here?
Let's.
Because usually I use the owl for to hear them. Which one?
Okay, so it's from your laptop, so you won't need this.
Okay, that's fine. All right, and I just now do screen share.
You want the lights off or?
Half and half. And then if I can please be made the host as well, so I can screen share. Actually, I don't know if I do my screen share from, uh-oh. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Did it like shock you?
It sounded like.
It sounded like
Did
it.
you get shocked or no? No. Okay. So you need to be made host.
Yeah.
Does it say that you're not host?
No. Here, let me. It says, yeah, I'm not the host. Just checked.
You're leaving today, or you leave, you're here today and tomorrow,
And then I'm gone.
and then you're not. And then when you come back.
October 4th or 5th. Yeah. All right, guys, sorry. I think my teaching Monday after having been gone was not anticipated, so we weren't set up here in the office, but I'm here now. Just so you know, I don't really monitor the chat box while I teach. Today is primarily a lecture class. I think it's one of the more fun classes, or at least I enjoy teaching it a little bit more than some of the technical ones. If you have questions, please do feel free to interrupt me, but please do it verbally. Oh, that's. How about now? Yeah. So I'm going to mute mine and then use the speaker, and then it usually works.
There's no sound on our side, Christian.
How about now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, you should be.
No, there is no sound.
Okay. Then I get the feedback.
So then you use, and I'm gonna unmute mine.
How about now? I
We
think
can hear you, but it's echoing now.
you guys
So.
Okay, I have it. Serena, you gonna turn off that? How about now, guys? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay, we're gonna work with that. I still hear a little echo, but whatever. Okay. So inspections and negotiations. So there's an old school methodology and a new school way of doing inspections. I'm gonna primarily teach you the new school way because I think it's really effective. I will tell you about the other method. It's still the same functionalities. It's really about the way you're approaching the situation. And I'll tell you why I think it's much more successful. So there are two primary reasons that escrows get canceled. The first one is the loan not going through. Okay, not the first one, that's usually second if it doesn't go through. But the other one is because you cannot come to an agreement regarding issues that are found during inspection and the negotiation of a credit repair and or a reduction to purchase price, any combination of those three things. Okay, so there's three ways to resolve a problem that you find in inspections is credit, reduction to purchase price, and repair. And it can be one, two, or all three of those.
What was the second one?
Reduction to purchase price. Okay, so the old school way of doing this is, first and foremost, it's not involving the other agent. Okay, so if I am the buyer's agent, okay, so we're going to talk about this from both agents' perspectives, but if I'm the buyer's agent, my only ambassador to the sellers who have to agree to anything I make in my request is the listing agent, right? So if I'm not involving the listing agent and I'm not giving them my reports and I'm not preparing them to talk to their sellers, even if all of the information that I provide to them is received as being honest and accurate, which probably is not going to be the case if I haven't included them, the seller's still going to have a negative reaction to it. Why? Because everyone is going to have a negative reaction to finding something unexpected and wrong, especially when it's going to cost them money in some way, right? So I like to, use a different methodology of collaborating with that agent as soon as I find something wrong, and we'll talk more about that. Also, old school kind of methodology of going about inspection requests is doing like a laundry list of pretty much everything wrong with the home. Well, that's bad for a few reasons. Again, going to be received very negatively by the seller, but primarily the buyer's not buying new construction. Okay, and so you're asking for things that, maybe grandfathered in or maybe nitpicky like handyman items. They're not buying a perfect new construction house. If they were, that sales price would probably be significantly higher than whatever you negotiated, right? The other problem with that is, even if you tell your buyer not to expect these things, but you're advising them to request everything, the sun, moon, and stars, no matter what, they're going to have an expectation that they're going to get a lot of that, if not all of it. And so you're really setting your buyer up for unrealistic expectations, which is detrimental to them and to you. Okay, so what are we looking for in inspection requests? We are looking to resolve unknown issues that are significant. Okay, safety hazards. Okay, we're not looking to upgrade. Anything that you can visibly see when you walk into the house that is, especially cosmetic damage, you're not asking for that. You should be making an offer with the things you know about and know how much they cost, or, something cosmetic. Your client, your buyer should be making an offer reflecting the condition they know to be the outcome. And if they want to ask for something in the initial offer, probably wouldn't be received well, but they can. And so anything that is known and visible and you can quantify, right? If you know that there's a problem, but you don't know how much it's going to cost and you have to do inspection to figure that out, that's not something you can take care of up front, right? Because you don't know how much it's going to cost. So you don't know how much you can ask for. But anything known, offer price, accepted price should be reflective of that. Okay. And then again, significant items and items that are safety hazards are really what we're looking for. Also, if a seller has any inspections or estimates of their own, or is aware of anything, they should be disclosing that and providing those estimates and or reports. If there was a previous escrow with a buyer that did inspections, you should and are be receiving and are legally entitled to a copy of those reports, and they should be given to the buyer. However, you as an agent should not rely on them, and you should definitely have your buyer have their own independent inspections. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about, I'll talk to you about the methodology I use, the new school methodology. But first I want to talk to you about like what inspections are typical. Okay, I call the core inspections, okay? Anything that I recommend to a client to take care of right away. And so these are different on a single family and a condo. So for a condo, typically I just need a general inspection and maybe a fireplace inspection, maybe if it has one. Also, if the fireplaces are all like in a row, like stacked on top of each other, even if there's something wrong, can't really do much about it without the HOA getting involved, and that's not going to be during the course of an escrow for repair. And depending upon the HOA and the way it's set up, what's set in the CC&Rs, it might actually be an HOA responsibility, not a unit owner responsibility. Same thing with balconies, and sometimes, but not always, like private rooftop decks and things like that. Technically, you know, it's all covered in the CC&Rs, but most of the time those areas are covered by the HOA, and so they're not unit owner responsibility, but there can be exceptions. So it's very important to read those HOA documents. Okay, so on a single family, at a minimum, I'm having a general inspection, a sewer line inspection, and a termite inspection. If there is a fireplace, I'm having a fireplace chimney inspection. If there is a pool and spa, I'm having a pool and spa inspection. Now, I have clients who are like, well, what about mold? What about roof? What about this or that? Well, a general inspector generally will flag to us if they think anything underneath the house, if they find anything that makes them think, oh, you should have a specialty inspection, which I refer to as secondary inspection, because most of the time I recommend to my clients, there's no need to have these unless the general inspector indicates that there's a problem. However, this is really key, guys. Our buyers are allowed to do whatever inspections they want. So while I will educate them about the fact that the general inspector will flag these things to us and tell us if they think it's important that we have these inspections, if your client wants to have one of them from the get-go, that's what you do. You should never discourage a buyer from having inspections. It opens you up to massive liability, okay? But on the flip side, if you go in there with an army of 12 different inspections as a listing agent, I am definitely calling for backup offers if I don't already have one, because it does not make me feel good about how the inspection negotiation is going to go. And I always wonder, like, oh, is this buyer going to be fair with their inspection request if there is one? Sometimes there isn't one. Sometimes you run into a house that's in such great condition, you don't have one. Fantastic, great news. I also know that there are a lot of agents out there who go into an escrow telling their clients, don't worry, we'll get the prices down in inspections. That is not right. That is actual fraud. That is against the law. That is against your licensure. You should never be advising your clients of that. And when I have clients, because there are clients who are like, great, Kristen, get me a big credit. And I'm like, if there's something to ask a credit for, I will do my best to get it. But I hope that your inspections are so fantastic and you got lucky enough to pick a house that is so perfect, you don't have to worry about that. And I try to redirect them into the way of thinking that they need to be. We don't want a house where you get massive credits. That means there are real problems, right? We want a great house. But if there are problems, we'll see if we can resolve them. All right, so guys, yes.
New construction, you also do inspection for new?
I also do inspection for new construction 100%. There are always things wrong, things that didn't get done properly, but the builder is required to repair them prior to close of escrow. There's still a request for repair. It shouldn't be credit, it's only repair. They're required to make it perfect.
Oh.
Yeah. And then there's builder's warranty, and I'm not going to go into that, but if someone buys new construction, anything and everything for 1 year should be covered unless it's caused by damage or neglect by the homeowner. And larger things, and this is really complicated law, are covered for much longer periods of time, like structure and things like that in new construction. So when you open an escrow, after you open your escrow, literally like the first thing you should be doing is ordering inspections, setting up inspections. The reason for this is it's very time sensitive. On a single family, I typically ask for about a 7 to 10 day investigation contingency, which covers inspections, okay? People will call it inspection contingency. If you've ever taken my contract classes, you know that's wrong. Investigation contingency is a hand. That is a contingency our contract covers. And one of the fingers is physical inspection, okay? Because investigation is not just about physical condition. So I just want you to know, hammer home the difference. We're not talking about inspection contingency. There is no such thing. It is one portion of the investigation contingency. Can you lift a portion of the investigation contingency? Absolutely. You can lift a finger. You can lift one part of investigation contingency, which will become very important for you if things are not done. Okay. Sometimes you cannot lift the entire investigation contingency, but the physical is probably the most stringent of those. And so lifting those oftentimes is good enough, right? How can you lift your whole investigation contingency if the seller has not given you everything you need to satisfy the needs of your buyer, right? You're waiting on them for a lot of those things, but physical, one of the fingers, that's totally within your control to wrap up. And so you can lift that on its own.
So that's the buyer's control.
Yeah. How quickly you get your inspections done, that's really buyer's agent control. So if I have 7 to 10 days typically on a single family, and I have 5 to 7 or 8 typically on a condo, because you don't need as many inspections. The reason that the first thing after I open escrow that I do is order inspections is because what did we just talk about? We talked about what I call core inspections and secondary inspections. If I find out that I need secondary inspections after the first round, I need time to find those people and set them up. And let me tell you, those specialty inspectors are fewer and harder to book. And you also want to make sure you get someone really great. Okay, so I'll tell you this right now. I know one mold inspector I like. Okay, I've never met a foundation inspector that I trust fully. I even worked at a foundation construction firm. I did some contract work for them. And I don't necessarily trust the person that I call him if I need foundation inspection, but I don't necessarily trust them. Send you down there? I mean, are you a licensed foundation contractor?
I'm a licensed geotechnical agent.
A geotechnical agent?
But not in this process.
Yeah, not in this process. So let's talk about that. When your buyers say, oh, I know who I'd like to use for inspectors. I'm going to have my cousin Vinny, who's a contractor, come and take a look at the house. I always tell that buyer, I am very happy to have your cousin Vinny through when we do inspections, especially because he can ask great questions that might help you get better answers and kind of sift through some of the very technical or official answers that inspectors are required to give you. We need the seller and the listing agent to take what we're telling them as honest and accurate. And if it's your cousin Vinny, the contractor, I don't know that that's going to be received as well as a really highly regarded industry professional that specializes in general inspection that the listing agent has definitely heard the name of and dealt with in the past, whether they use them or their other agents that they were working with in a deal used them. How can I get my ambassador, my only way to the seller, to think information is accurate if I have some no name that's a family relation? So bring them in. But here's the other problem. Also, if I'm a listing agent and your buyer brings in their cousin Vinny and you guys give me an estimate, if our escrow canceled, I have to give that piece of junk estimate to any other buyer, which means I probably have to tell my seller to pay and hire a contractor that will either substantiate that so we know it's accurate, or that will give an opinion. What's that?
Redo it. Just redo it.
Oh yeah, because I don't know this person. It's the buyer's cousin. We've now canceled escrow. I'm required to give this to the new buyer, but I don't know if it's accurate. So now I have to tell my seller before we even go back on the market, I want us to get a licensed contractor we know is legitimate to either substantiate this or to give us information showing that it's not accurate. That way we can give it all to the buyer, because if this guy came up with some $40,000 repair and it's really like a $4,000 repair, do you think that that is going to have an effect on what the next buyer thinks? Absolutely. But me as a listing agent, I'm going to hate you as the buyer's agent because you let your buyer control you know, like you didn't control your buyer, you didn't give them good advice, you didn't tell them, hey, we have to, because we need the listing agent and seller to take the information we're giving them as accurate. We need someone that specializes in this, that is well known in our industry. That way they take that information as accurate, right? So I'm really going to dislike you the next time your buyer is coming right on my listing. Do you think that I'm going to want you unless I have to have you because your terms and price is better? Probably not. If I have my way with it, I'm probably going to give better information to the next highest person, a dollar price person, because, and I'm going to ask my sellers if I have permission to do that, because I know you didn't have control over your buyers, and I know you fucked me and my seller last time. I don't want it to happen again, right? This is why it's really important for us. Not only is it critical to the success of your buyer's goal, but it's also critical to the success of your own reputation and future career. Okay.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So who is choosing the inspector? The buyer,
The-
or like you help them figure it out?
So it is the buyer's choice ultimately, but I always give them referrals.
Okay.
And how many referrals for anything should we always give our clients? Three.
Oh, three.
Three.
Okay, how many people you should recommend?
Three.
Okay.
Yeah, should always give three. And why is that? Well, if someone's wrong, they had the choice to select. You didn't give them only one. That information came back wrong. They find out after the fact, they close, and now they want to sue you, right? I'm kind of slick about it. I'm like, so I'm sending you a list of inspectors, and I've ordered them from the ones I've worked with the most and I like the most. They're all of them. If I put them on there, they're all reputable. They all do a good job, but I'm ordering them in order of my familiarity and experience level with them, right? So you have to be careful. I'm long in my career, and most of my clients are repeats. I need to like remind myself to be careful, but you know, you have to be careful for liability. All right, so we have to do things in a timely manner. Now, if there's a big problem and you're having a hard time getting that secondary inspection, most listing agents and sellers will work with you because they want to close the deal and they need to find out what is actually wrong as well. So have very open communication with them. I'm coaching you now on my new school way of doing this. Again, this is my only ambassador to achieve my buyer's goals, okay, is the listing agent. That's the only way I get to talk to the seller. So if I see a big problem, I am not there to fool anyone. I am not there looking to make up a credit. So if I run into a big problem, like there's a structural issue, there's this, that, a lot of times what I will do immediately when the general inspector pulls it out, and by the way, buyers should always be at inspections. And the reason why is because the inspection reports are official and they look scary, and they tell them to see a licensed professional on everything. But if they're there, you know, as something as simple as like, you know, whatever makes the toilet flush, like on the inside, some little seal, in their report, it will say, have a licensed plumbing contractor look at it. But when you're there, they'll be like, it's a $2 part at Home Depot and you can pop it in yourself, but they can't put that in the report. So this is very important that the buyer understands this so that they're not afraid. And also, as good as inspectors are, they're professionals. And sometimes they need to be asked a lot of questions, like leading questions. Oh, is that grandfathered in, or is that a current safety thing that we have to change, right? So it's your job as the agent to kind of translate between the inspector and the buyer, or ask questions on their behalf if they're not asking enough questions, so that whatever technical issue there is, it's explained in a way your buyer understands. If your buyer understands it, then they can very easily make up their mind if this is something they can undertake or not, or something that's important to them. But when it looks scary in an inspection report, believe me, they're a lot less likely to feel comfortable about any of it. Also, as a listing agent, you should always be at the inspection. Buyer agent, no brainer, you have to be there, okay? But listing agent should be there as well. You'll find crummy listing agents that are not there. And this is wrong for this reason, is because, again, how can I advise my seller if I'm getting information from the buyer and buyer's agent? I wasn't there for the inspections. I can't tell my seller, oh, this is like, let me show it to you, this is accurate. Or I can't even say, I don't think this is accurate, or you know what, why don't we get a second opinion? I can't say anything because I wasn't there and I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. And I'm not a contractor. I used to build, so I have a little bit more familiarity, I think, than a lot of people, but I don't know what they're talking about half the time. It's always easier in person. I can take notes in a way that I understand, which is probably closer to layman's terms, so I can better explain it to my client. But here's the really big, important reason. Buyer and listing agent should always be there. If we find something, I want the listing agent to see it, to hear the same thing I'm hearing. If the inspector is saying, oh, we need a secondary inspection here, you know what I'll do? I'll actually sit down with the listing agent, throw out names until we find someone we both like and agree upon. We will use that inspector. And then if they're delayed a week, you know what? That agent is going to push through an extension on my investigation contingency for me, because you know what? There's a valid reason for it. She knows I made the call in front of her. It's someone we both like, so we don't have to worry about it. It's better to give us a couple day inspection extension for our contingency, because we're likely to resolve it and the information is very likely to be accurate. Okay, so very important. I really like to collaborate with the listing agent on bringing other people in. Or I'll bring someone specialty in and wow, I'm even shocked. Like I didn't expect this. That's why I didn't collaborate with the listing agent, but they're saying this is gonna be $25,000. That's a big number, okay? So I show this to the listing agent. I don't even wait for their response. I send them inspection reports the moment I get them, but I'll say, I'll send it over and I'll call up the listing agent. I'll be like, hey, listing agent, look, this is a big number. Do you want to bring someone else in, like just for a second opinion? Because I know it'll make your clients feel better and you feel better. This is who I normally work with. Who do you work with? And at that point, if I've been late to the party, I will again ask them if they want to hire someone at their seller's cost, just to double check us. And same thing, if I'm the listing agent, even if the other agent's not inviting me, my seller wants me to hire someone usually that they're paying for to substantiate this information before they agree to it. Yeah.
So escrow open and then you do inspection after escrow open?
Yes.
Okay, and second question, who paid for the inspection? The
Buyer. So it used to be very customary in real estate that the seller always got the termite report and paid for it and usually paid for the work. We stopped doing this because the seller doesn't have a right to cancel an escrow unless a buyer fails to perform. So a seller didn't know how much termite completion was going to cost. And so ultimately they were contractually bound to writing a blank check, okay? A blank check and had no right to cancel. Unfortunately, a few times happened where this number came in so big that the seller, really wasn't in a position to sell anymore or for their future plans, what they had planned on after the sale. And because seller has no right to cancel, the state actually came in and changed our contract and made it not mandatory anymore. So I never want to see termite in any offer or counter offer ever. Termite should be handled just the way general inspection is, at the buyer's sole discretion in inspections that you set up. Now, even if you get a termite report from the listing agent, from the seller, I strongly advise that you have your buyer do their own independent inspection anyways. It's like $100 to $150 typically. Why is that? Well, I've been around the block and I've seen quite a bit of fraud from sellers and listing agents, particularly high end. You would think that that doesn't happen there. That's where it happens the most. How do you safeguard yourself against fraud? Have your buyer have their own independent investigation with someone they hire, right? So yeah, just do that. Now, yes.
So 5 fingers of the inspection.
I don't know if there are 5. I just call them the fingers.
Or the fingers. One is the physical. Is termite part of your physical?
Yeah, termite's part of the physical.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's an investigation into the physical condition of the property, right? Insurability is one. If you look at a contingency removal form, which we'll talk a little bit about, but not much in this class today, you'll see under the investigation contingency, it has them broken out so you can lift just a portion of it instead of the whole thing. Look at the contingency removal document if you want.
Christine, I have a question. Sorry. How much you have to be dependent on the general inspector to give information about the termite? Do you
Not at
go
all.
by-
A general inspector might point out wood damage or evidence that they blindly see, but a termite inspector should be used for termite inspection. A general inspector is not going to look as closely at all of the little the little indicators that there could be termite damage. Although there'll be a lot of overlap. There should always be a lot of overlap, and you'll see that inspectors will tell you, oh, your termite guy is probably going to talk more about this.
So we always start with the general and general and termite, because then if we need more, we do.
Now,
more?
core inspections are on a single family, general, termite, sewer. If there's a pool and spa, pool and spa. If there's a chimney, chimney. Wait, did I already say chimney? Fireplace, yeah. So termite, general, sewer are core, and then core, if they're there, is chimney, pool, spa. Okay, if you get into estate homes, there's more. Okay, so like or you get into like a hillside property, you might want a geological as a core. Okay, if you have something with, you know, like big grounds and backup generators and things like that, you might be getting weird inspections on your first round. Or if your client just has a particular concern, like mold was sensationalized, even though there's mold in almost every structure, most of it's harmless. There's mold that's not, but it was sensationalized by the media a long time ago, right? And so everyone's like, oh my God, mold. So some buyers just insist on having a mold inspection right off. Also, pay attention. You won't know initially, but you'll learn things over time. Mold inspectors, FYI, there is no regulatory body. There is no one regulating how a mold company or a mold inspection company does a mold inspection. So I'll tell you this, a lot of them take baseline air samples. Air samples are garbage. They'll take an air sample near what you suspect to have mold. Garbage. The only accurate mold test goes into something called invasive inspection, which we're not allowed to do without permission from the seller. Invasive means we're damaging something in order to do an inspection. We're opening a wall. When I say surface sample, they're actually opening something up and scraping something to find or to take the mold sample from. So it took me like a good year, but I found a mold inspector who actually won't make me take air samples. Mold inspections are notoriously expensive too, and you need a lot of samples. So it's another reason I don't want a fucking air sample. Why do I want an air sample? It can be 50% higher over here than over here because there are mold spores all over in the world. You know, just all over from vegetation. There's mold spores in the air you're breathing right now, no matter where you're at, okay? So yeah, air samples suck, but you won't know these things. I mean, I didn't even know until a couple of years ago that a mold inspector was not regulated in any way. I didn't know that these people taking air samples near them were quacks. I had no idea. And even once I found out, you know, a lot of like, I would ask my general inspector and he's like, you know, I really don't want to get involved in that conversation. So, you know, I did independent research online and things like that, but there are like general inspectors, termite inspectors, they're heavily regulated. They have to do continuing education just like we do for their licensure. So they're very heavily regulated. So just know that not every inspector is created equal.
Even by the windows.
Yeah.
It's different.
There's more,
than the center of
yeah,
the room.
yeah.
I mean, that is.
Yeah. So if I'm taking, you know, and where is most water damage? It's near points of entry. That's how the water got in there in the first place. So duh, whatever, the sample count is going to be higher in that area because you're getting more outdoor air movement through that area. So it's not an accurate indicator if there's actual mold present. And it's not indicative of the kind that is present if there is mold in that area. So yeah, invasive inspection, guys. That means an inspector that is taking something apart or damaging something in some way, and that is not allowed without seller permission, okay? And so I had a buyer once, I repped both sides in a deal. They brought in their own HVAC inspector. This guy went in and started taking the AC apart. I had to throw him out. This is not allowed, okay? You have to obtain permission. And I was a listing agent too. Was it okay? And the seller was there. Was it okay with her that he was doing that? No. And if a buyer or any representative thereof, including an inspector, causes damage or has an accident on the property, it is actually the buyer's responsibility. The seller's homeowner, this is one of the legal exceptions. Seller's homeowner's policy is off limits. Seller's not responsible. The only exception is if the seller has an animal that they have not properly secured that injures a person there. Okay, so I always tell my clients, even if your dog is nice, remove it from the house, crate it, you know, put it somewhere. We're going to go into every room, nook and cranny. So sticking it in, you know, a back bedroom is not going to work. You know, I don't care if they're nice. We're weird people dressed in weird outfits, poking and prodding in every weird area. You know, even the nicest dog could bite. What if you have a weird asshole person that is, provoking the dog
Right.
that we don't see. Buyer's still responsible. So I just tell seller seller would still be responsible. So seller, just remove the dog or cat or whatever. I had a cat that bit people. So in my case, it would have been a cat. He died. He had dementia. That's why he's biting people. He did. He had dementia. I know, my sunny bunny cat. Yeah, he started peeing on walls too, like right in front of me. When I put him down, I was like, I'm glad we're still friends. I love you, but if you peed on the wall one more time, I'm not sure we would have parted as friends. Okay, so back to inspections. When we've concluded all of our inspections, it is time for you to review these reports with your buyer and decide what it is you're going to ask for and how you're going to ask for it. Okay, so we typically tend to advise buyers to ask for credits or reduction of purchase price. Why? Well, if the seller does a repair, it's hard for us to verify that the repair was all done properly. The most we can do is be very specific about how we want it repaired and who we want it repaired by, and you should put this in the request if you're asking for repair, that we want documented evidence that the entire scope of work was covered, okay, who it was performed by, and if there was a warranty. Okay. And you can stipulate this as the buyer's agent, but man, the listing agent and the seller are going to think that you're kind of crazy. Which is why there are reasons that everyone might want the repair done. So this is just general. Obviously, there are exceptions to things. Maybe someone wants the work done because they need to move in right away, right? That kind of thing. But as the buyer's agent, if you're going to have the seller do the work, control it. Who do you want the work done by? You don't want it repaired. You want it repaired by blah, 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 or by a licensed blank contractor, and require a paid receipt and proof of the scope of work that was completed. You may even want to make the repairs subject to reinspection by the buyer's inspector, but the buyer would have to pay for that reinspection fee. Okay.
Wouldn't at this time the seller be more than happy to credit?
Not every seller's the same.
Because it's like, I don't want to give them.
Yeah, I know. And it's like with small repairs, I might ask for a repair instead of a credit because we don't care who does it, right? It's like patch this or whatever. We don't care. So it's really, it's in relation to how serious the repair is. Now, keep in mind, if you successfully negotiate a credit, if it's a big one, this might be a problem for someone you wouldn't have thought. The buyer's lender. Lenders limit the dollar amount a credit can be. It cannot exceed what are referred to as NRCCs, non-recurring closing costs. So if the buyer has a loan, the lender does have a maximum dollar amount the buyer is allowed to receive as a credit. Okay, we don't know what these non-recurring closing costs total. They're an estimate until the very end anyways. It's between escrow and the lender to figure out this number. So if you have the idea that you're going to successfully negotiate a large credit, before you make that request, you should probably pick up the phone and call the buyer's mortgage broker. Do not tell a lender, do not tell a loan officer that there are big problems. Tell a mortgage broker. Okay, you can tell a mortgage broker. Thankfully, most buyers work with mortgage brokers. A loan officer has allegiance to who? Who do they work for? The bank. The bank that is making the loan. And a bank is very risk averse, right? They're going to want to know a lot more. In fact, they might want the repair done a certain way before they'll even issue loan documents, let alone close. And this can cause problems for buyer and seller. Maybe the seller, that work causes them to move out or not be able to use their home at a time when they're going to be moving and crazy, right? This is another reason we hide the word termite from lenders, is because if a lender finds out about it, sometimes, no, they want it done and they want it done before they'll give you loan approval. Well, why would the seller pay for something and move out of their house for 3 days if they don't know the deal's a done deal? What if the buyer and seller didn't agree to it? The buyer just figured they're going to eat this cost and pay for it, right? So now the buyer has to pay for work on a home that they don't yet own when they don't even know if their loan is formally approved. It becomes problematic, which is why we hide these things from the lender. So a mortgage broker works for who? The buyer. Okay. So we can share anything we want to with the mortgage broker. And the better the mortgage broker is, mine and I say something like, so hypothetically, if this were to happen in a home like the one we're working on, hypothetically, how would we best handle this? So you can ask them, what's the maximum dollar amount of credit a buyer can receive? It's okay if you need or are going to negotiate a higher credit than this, it can still be done, but it's going to be done partially as a credit and partially as a reduction of purchase price, or all a reduction of purchase price. Okay. So if the credit is too big and it's the buyer's lender, which would stipulate this, which you can really only discuss with a mortgage broker. So what happens if you know you're going to negotiate a huge credit and your buyer has a loan from the bank directly? You should probably just write your request for repair as a reduction to purchase price or request for repair. Yeah. And these documents, once, yeah, even if they're accepted, you never send them to escrow or to the loan professional. Why? Well, we want to hide it from the bank. Even if there's a mortgage broker, the escrow company is dealing directly with the bank as well, and they'd have to forward any of this along. So if we're making financial changes to the deal, but we don't want anyone to see what we've negotiated in the request for repair, how do we do this? Well, we have a document for the request for repair. The acronym is RR, request for repair. The seller can respond on that document, or, you know, it can be a lengthy, painful counter negotiation with multiple R's and then what's referred to as an RRRR. Seller response and reply to request for repair. And I call it the form, because if you're to the point, people are feeling kind of not pleasant at this point. In fact, the longer and more complicated your request for repair becomes, the less likely you are statistically to succeed. So I like to do a lot of pre-verbal negotiation with the other agent. And this works really well for me because I've already inadvertently done it by inviting them to collaborate with me on bringing in the right people and getting opinions and things like that, right? So by the time I make a request for repair, most of the time it's pretty much accepted, or maybe there's a few little tweaks to it on their reply. So if I get an RR or an a quadruple R accepted, and there's financial terms on there, escrow and the lender have to know about them. Have to, because all of those numbers affect the loan structure and escrow, right? So how do I tell them without sharing these forms on which I negotiated this? Yeah, no matter what's on the RR or quadruple R, there can be, like I said, combination of three things: repair, reduction of purchase price, and credit. Anything that's money, so just credit or reduction of purchase price, I also draft an addendum that says exactly the same thing. And I make it an addendum to the RPA, and we just reduce that price or credit the seller. We don't, or buyer, we don't say for what. So the language would be something like, seller agrees to credit buyer in the amount of blank dollars through the close of escrow. We don't never say why, no one asks, this is our workaround. That's what we send to escrow, that's what we send to the mortgage broker or loan officer.
The R forms are.
Never go to escrow, never go to the loan professional. Yes, well, if you've only negotiated repair, you don't need to send, you don't need an addendum, right? It's only if you've changed financial terms that we need an addendum mirroring the financial terms portion of what we've negotiated in any of those RR forms. Okay. Okay. So, let's see what else.
So regardless of repairs asked for, whether done or not, or price is given or not, don't even go there. Just put whatever you need into the reduction of price format, get it all finished.
No, not necessarily. It could be advantageous to your buyer or to the seller for some reason. Maybe they want to do repair work for some reason. Maybe, and this is most of the time the case, they would prefer actually a credit so they don't have to bring as much money in for closing. People don't like to cough up their money, even though it's going to cost them the same. In fact, if they do a reduction of purchase price, it's lower property taxes in perpetuity of their ownership.
Correct.
It's slightly lower commissions and slightly lower closing costs for both the buyer and seller. If people thought about money in a different way, I think that they would typically prefer the reduction of purchase price, but maybe they're scraping together pretty much every penny they have to close this deal. Maybe they want more money to do remodel. And in general, people just don't like, yeah. So most clients prefer credit. Yeah. So, but I want you to know about the different workarounds, and I want you to know the difference so that you can explain these things to them.
For credit, then what? Then like repair?
Then it goes into
Credit goes toward closing costs. That means that the buyer has to bring in less funds for the remainder of their down payment plus the closing costs that they have a few days prior to the close of escrow.
But then they will need to repair the kitchen or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Or later.
But maybe, you know what? Yeah, let's say I negotiate a huge credit for a problem with a subfloor in a bathroom because water's rotted it out. Except I have plans to remodel that entire kitchen. I don't want a repair. I don't necessarily want a reduction of purchase price. I don't plan on repairing it immediately, but I do plan on repairing it as I move and figure things out and price it all out, and I know how I'm going to go about my total remodel. So that might be a reason why, right? It's not up to us to decide how, why, what's best. It's up to us to know the differences, explain it to our clients so that they can tell us what their decision is, and it's our job to do what? Achieve their, try to the best of our ability to achieve their objective the way they want us to achieve it.
So the client can choose if you want a repair or if you
Uh-huh.
want credit?
They can choose how they want to ask for it. Doesn't mean that the seller is going to agree to that. But a lot of times I have this pre-negotiation with the client. Or with the other agent, I tell them what they can anticipate us requesting. They probably have a pretty good idea because if I thought it was important enough to request, I've already invited them to collaborate. And then I tell them, all right, so I think my client would prefer this method. This is the reason why. Can you check with your clients? Because, especially if it's repair, maybe the seller, they have a bunch of young kids. They don't want people in the house. They're moving out. Maybe they're like, no, please just let us credit you. A lot of times sellers are, please just let us credit you. The other problem with the repair, like I said, is verifying that it was done properly. Even though the scope of work might show that everything was done, you don't know. And a lot of times, the only time you have to verify it is a few days prior to close. You've got a lot going on, signing loan docs, funding, getting ready for recording, all of those things. Those last few days, it becomes problematic. What if it's electrical work that unless you open the wall back up, you can't even check on? I mean, this is why a lot of people prefer credit, but not everyone does. It's up to your client. And it's part of negotiation. The other thing I want to tell you guys is a seller has no obligation to even respond to a request for repair. So they can agree, they can try to negotiate slightly different terms, they can counter, right? They can flat out refuse, or they can refuse to respond. And can they issue a notice to perform to try to enforce the investigation contingency, even if you haven't successfully wrapped up a negotiation in relation to it? Yes, they can. But at that point, probably what's going to happen is buyers are either going to back off or they're going to say, yeah, cancel. We can't come to a completion or come to an agreement. But I want you to know that that is 100% within the legal right of the seller, and they can still legally enforce those timeframes. So don't think that you have protection from receiving a notice to perform just because you haven't received a response to request for repair. Okay. In fact, if the listing agent has not sent you a response to request for repair and instead sends you a notice to perform, that's probably your answer right there. It means big fat no. The seller said no.
And then what's happened?
Well, the buyer can either accept that or they can try, although it doesn't change the timeframes on anything, they can rescind their previous request for repair and submit a new one. But really what should happen is the buyer's agent should pick up the phone and call the listing agent and find out what's going on. Can we salvage this deal? Why not? How does the seller feel? A lot of agents, they act very hands-off and they use the forms to communicate. That is a very bad idea. In fact, sometimes when people don't agree, it's because they're not understanding the same criteria or words. So if you're doing this all on documents, you are doing either buyer or seller, no matter who you're representing, a major disservice. This is one of those times where you're working it out with a listing agent who is your partner in this, the same way you would work out a complex financial issue or issue with your significant partner, like your romantic partner or your family member or a business partner, if we're business partners, right? You work with that person primarily, even though they're representing someone else, right? You need to lay the groundwork and you have to give them an idea of what to anticipate, what to expect. And you need to make sure, and it's also a pulse check. You need to make sure that they're taking you as being, your information is being valid, accurate, correct, honest. And sometimes it doesn't matter, even if you are, at the end of the day, the seller just says no. And you also have to prepare your buyers for this. So, in my instance, I told you, I advise my buyers, keep it simple, keep it to the big ticket items. It's very unlikely we're going to get all of this. I think that we should focus on the large things that are really important that you really do care about, instead of, like, I received a request for repair where someone was asking for us to, replace one of those stupid rubber tub stoppers, like a plug stopper. Go to fucking Home Depot for your client and pay 50 cents to get it. Why does this end up in a request for repair? Right? Like, how did that make me and the seller feel? It made me feel like I don't even want to deal with you. I dislike you so much. You have no control over your client. I literally wrote them back a response that says seller declines to respond, go buy new construction. They caved. But you know what? They probably deserved about 5K in actual credits. But at that point, my seller was so pissed, and I didn't blame my seller, that I was like, no, you're getting nothing. You can take it or go away. I have 3 backup offers. Take it or go away. Even with the backup offers, I would have told my seller to work with them on the things that were real. That would have been my advice. Of course, my seller can disagree, but my seller was a pretty rational person. Probably would have worked with them on those things that I said are real and important if they didn't load it up with this bullshit that, you know, they were just trying to nickel and dime us. That is not the way to buy a property. If your client's focused on that, they're focused on the wrong things. All right, so that's pretty, yeah. Oh, by the way, before I forget, you can ask me your question in a second. If the seller agrees to the terms in the request for repair, even if it's a multiple round process, the give is the buyer lifts the investigation contingency. In fact, all of the forms say it, and you have to be really careful about the way things are worded, but a lot of times a contingency removal form is attached to that document, lifting the investigation contingency, and a lot of times all the other little ones that no one actually cares about. The big contingencies are investigation, loan, appraisal. Those are your 3 big contingencies. And a lot of times, like I'll even sometimes hold appraisal, loan, and investigation. I will actually hold getting my investigation negotiation completed, because I'm leaning on my buyer's lender, their mortgage broker. I'm like, can I lift the loan and appraisal contingency, or just the appraisal, something? Because I want to dangle a carrot in front of them. Look, if you agree to my buyer's request for repair, we're a done deal, because I'm also going to lift the appraisal and loan. So I'll say to them, I'll actually put that in there. Your request, it says, if the seller agrees, the buyer agrees to lift the contingencies on the attached contingency removal. That contingency removal only applies if the seller, without changing anything, agrees to everything. It is much more likely I can get the seller to agree if I'm like, bam, it's all done. You're done. Your deal is done. Just say yes. Just say yes to our dress. You're done. We're married, right? That's it. So it is much more likely that a seller is just gonna be fine. Give them the extra $2,000 because they're done. They're done. They're done. Can you always lift them all with the investigation, or with the request for repair? If there is one, no, you cannot always lift them all. I lift as much as I can safely as that carrot. But if I can drag it a day or two and be safe about dragging it a day or two, I do, because seller's so much more likely just to say yes. Okay, what was your question? Oh, sorry.
But, no, that's okay. I have one more. If the loan
Mhm.
and the appraisal have issues after you have removed,
That's fine. You don't lift the loan or appraisal contingency. That's basically what I just touched on. You don't lift it with the request for repair unless you safely can. Those
but you're pretty much safe with the loan.
Not pretty much, 100% safe. If the loan officer or mortgage broker says you're good to lift the loan and appraisal, you can. But if it's not time to, and you need to wrap up your request for repair negotiation, you just focus on the investigation contingency.
Before the repair actually happened, right? If
Yeah.
you just agree to do the repair, I can already.
Yeah. It's just the agreement to the repair. So the making sure it happens is something entirely different. Yeah. And believe me, I've had problems just a couple times, but I've had problems with sellers saying a repair was made and it wasn't. I bulldozed my way through that when I found out, but yeah. Again, another reason why I really prefer just credit or reduction of purchase price.
Probably the easiest.
Yeah, it is easy, but doesn't always work for the buyer and seller, and it's up to them, not us. All right, any more questions, guys? Okay, while I'm away, which will be for 3 weeks, I'll be back on the 5th of October. Justin Jacobson is covering for me. So if you have technical questions in relation to business and your mentor is not available, he is temporarily your built-in backup mentor. However, if you have a problem with the program or your mentor or something about money, you still need to reach out to me. Do so via email because I'll be 9 to 10 hours ahead, depending upon where I am. I will get back to you within 24 hours. Just email if it's program related, but not work related. If it is work related, Justin Jacobson, okay? YouTube. I've been teaching twice a week, so you have all fresh rounds of videos. If you need to study, and you should study ahead, even if I'm not here. And yeah, I mean, go get them. Go sell. But if it's something really important, if I'm able to, you know, I'll always make time for you. So you're welcome. Bye, guys.
Christine,
John.
I apologize. If you want to get the reduced, if you want to fill out the request for repair, that said something needs to be done, a pipe needs to be changed, or maybe there was some termite damage.
John, I'm going to stop you because I didn't hear all of that. So I need you to start over.
Oh, I mean, if you want to ask, I have to remove the contingency inspection tomorrow. I am just thinking because we didn't do any termite inspection, but the general inspector didn't say that there's any damage or things like that. I have till tomorrow to send the termite inspector. But anyway, if there is some more repair needs to be done, like the pipe needs to be changed on the sewer system, or maybe the air conditioning needs to be changed a little bit. So shall I ask a ballpoint figure about like $50,000? That's
I can't tell you how much to ask for, but I mean, I'll tell you right now, you shouldn't have to ask me. You should be getting these numbers from your inspectors. And if the inspector won't give you an estimate, you need to send your inspection report to a licensed contractor that does that type of work. Usually your inspector will refer someone to you and they will give you dollar amounts. I should have mentioned that in class. I have had buyer's agents on my listings say, oh, we want $20,000. And I'm like, for fucking what? You didn't have anyone come in and give dollar amounts. I didn't hear that. I'm here for the inspections. I didn't hear the general inspector talk about this, or they said it was a minor issue. And you're asking me for 20K. Do you have estimates? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, then go take a hike.
right.
You need to substantiate. You need them to trust that information in order for you to successfully get any money, let alone that amount of money.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And go get a termite inspector in there. No, it's not okay. The general inspector does not do termite. That's why we have a general and a termite.
Yeah, I got your termite guy. I called him up.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a safe trip, Christine.
Thank you, John.
Enjoy it. Stay safe.
Thank you. Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.